discuss now is basically your assignment and your next assignment. So we're going to talk about design issues. If you were going to do your research now, it will be the same as the last uh, plate, the plate number one, where I would have required you to write the chapters one and two, okay, which is basically the problem statement, the problem in its settings, and then the second chapter is about the related literature and the which will include the research framework. Now, I decided that we should just go through this process together so that I can guide you on how it's supposed to be done. Because the way it was done last time in the first plate was not very satisfactory. I think that you still need to really understand what some parts of the research supposed to mean. Okay. Um, in the previous plate number one, I already gave the problem, and in fact, during the briefing, I specifically said that this is already the problem. So it was just a matter of actually copy paste, no? But then there's still some of you who did not seem to understand that, and even if they wrote that as a problem, they still added more problems, okay? More statements, and some actually made their own. Okay, um, so how to write the problem, how to identify the problem is something that is I would rather have you learn that in your research class, which is next year, rather than me teaching it here now, because the this is a design class, and the issues or the design problem is very limited to just one problem. So in your research class, probably you can think of any research problem. Anyway, after that, the bulk of what you were supposed to do really is to identify the design issues, to break the problem into sub problems. Okay, so it's like this is just such a big problem, but let me break it down into say two or three smaller problems, and if I get to solve each problem, because they're smaller, they're easier to solve, and then you solve one, you solve two, and you solve the three. So therefore, you are able to solve the main problem because the main problem is composed of the three. So that's the logic behind it. Okay, but how do you identify what those sub problems are? And I told you that this is done basically by identifying the design issues, since this is a design plate. And then I gave the Hectaeus, the one from Herberger, the one with the human, economic, cultural, technology, temporal, um, aesthetic, environmental, and safety. Okay. Um, and there are a few of you who actually got it, but again, most of you did not. No? And just like the problem, what happened is that some of you who got it, okay, there are some of you who got it, some of you um, considered it but added more sub problems, more issues, and some just really invented their own. So it was a mixture of things. Okay, so there were eight. Okay, there are many issues in design, and most of them are applicable to all types of project. So I've been repeating this. No, um, there are so many. And I mentioned that this author, the reason why I'm drawn to this author is because he was able to find a way to to put everything, every possible problem into certain categories, which are only eight. Okay, because otherwise it will really be difficult to organize each one. And in your assignment, you actually came up with a lot of different design issues, which I will present later, the result. No? But there are issues that I said that are applicable only to this particular project. Okay. Now, what are those? So the factors simply that contribute to this are two. No, the site and its surroundings, and then the desire of the owner and client. Okay. Um, for the first plate, um, the site is actually uh, well, the there's not much problem with the site in terms of views because it's inside. Probably there is that noise, and then the main problem is the approach because it's narrow, and it's actually sort of the same with this one. Um, in fact, some of you uh, ended up trying to use the private road. Okay, so how do you? The main problem then is how do you make a building which is attractive enough for tenants, considering that you have a narrow road leading to an inside lot, interior lot. Okay, that is one of the design problems supposedly, and the other design problem, which is or design issue, which was presented by architect Malayaw, is related to acoustics. Okay, so how do you design the facility to satisfy the acoustical requirements given to you by the instructor? Um, and then some other problems which I only thought of two. Okay, but for this I thought of three. Um, so the result of the survey is like this. Most of you actually considered safety and security as an important design issue. And then second is the aesthetics. Okay. And then coming in third are circulation, how the roads are designed, and then planning for efficiency and economy. So there were people who said that, okay, it should be designed, the road, including the road, should be designed so that there will be more lots, and then the shape of the lot should be uh, studied well so that in the end it's more economic. Okay. And then coming in fourth includes accessibility. Normally, when we talk about accessibility, we sometimes refer to accessible to different types of people. But I think here, accessibility means accessibility to transportation systems. Okay, and then there are also the climate, and then spaces which are supposed to be exclusive for the homeowners, and then comfort, and then a bit of and everything else, following regulation, the shape of the lot, function, waste segregation, health, drainage, ecology, privacy, and lighting, noise pollution also. So if you notice, there's so many, okay? But then a lot of this actually is applicable to any project, any subdivision project, okay? So the thing is, how do we choose the design option? No? How do we, I mean, the design issue? How do we actually identify which is particular for this project? Okay, so we revisit the hectares. We have the human, environmental, cultural, temporal, technical, economic, aesthetic, and safety. So, and for each of them, there are sub categories. Okay, and so when I tried to group the the answers earlier into this, I came up with this. No? That in the end, it's human issues which are the most, followed by safety and environmental. Then aesthetics comes second, third, together with economic, and then there's a bit of cultural and technical issues. So So I tried to group the earlier answers to this. Okay, so but these are the answers which came from you. Okay, so let's see whether they actually fit what I consider to be the design issues that we should consider in this project. Okay, so we will revisit the brief, and I emphasize using blue letters and in bold some important terms which we will consider. So a real estate company decided to buy a property in Barangay San Jose, Cebu City for an open market housing development. So this means if it's an open market housing development, we do not need to bother ourselves with economizing, okay, going for the minimum, going for the most efficient, okay, because people will or has people have the tendency, the capacity, at least to pay for whatever you will provide them. Okay, so we're talking about uh, like a sky is the limit sort of budget. The site is irregularly shaped and is relatively flat. It is accessible to the main road, Talamban Road, towards the east and a barangay road towards the north. The company decided to offer both house and lot to potential buyers. Moreover, the company wants to sell only two-story houses. So the fact that it's an open market, so okay, so the developer really went all out, no? House and lot, and then two stories only. So um, no single story structures. So it so says here, while RA 7279, Urban Development and Housing Act of 1992 requires 20% of the land area of the main subdivision to be devoted to socialized housing development, the company decided to comply by providing a new settlement for social housing elsewhere. So this is just like a disclaimer, no, that okay, we actually consider this, but it is a separate thing. Okay, just in case some of you gets confused because you read this, you saw the requirement, and you're wondering why is it not part of our consideration in our plate. Okay, so it's actually considered. So the company wants to provide a safe community that promotes outdoor activities for a healthy lifestyle. The company would also like to have a particular theme for the whole development to attract potential buyers. So I underlined what the client wants. It's a safe community, healthy lifestyle. And then there's a theme to attract potential buyers. And considering that it is an open market, so we have to think of what the theme could be, could consider. So now we also consider the site, no, because there were two factors. One is the client requirement, and the other one is the site. And what do we know about the site? So it is near San Carlos. The site is accessible by public and private transportation. So you can take the jeep, you can go there. Actually, flooding is not a major problem. And I don't think there was ever a problem of flooding in this area. Okay. So surrounded by housing development, right beside it is Maryville subdivision. A little bit farther is the Pristina North subdivision, and I know that even farther is the Layson, Villa Layson. So it's more, it's not as busy like a commercial district. Okay, so it's busy only with people going home and coming from home. Okay, so is that a problem? So in terms of design, it's not, no? And then we zoom in, we see that it's bounded on two sides by a road, so access to the site itself is not a problem. In fact, there are two roads. It is flat, so topography is not a problem. So slope is not a problem. There are no structures, so we don't even have to worry about trees not to be cut or buildings that should not be demolished. There are public utilities, so this is the main road, so there is the drainage system there and also the electricals. Um, and well, for those who know this area, okay, I I guess there should also be water supply, although sometimes the pressure is very low. And the view is not really crucial. There's no fantastic view that you should preserve because everything else around is flat and everything is just a um, houses. Okay, so there's nothing extra special in terms of the site requirements. So everything is really taken from the requirement of the client. So if we are to write down the problem in terms of a research paper, the problem would be the study aims to develop a property into an open market housing that provides a safe community, promotes outdoor activities for healthy lifestyle, and conveys a particular theme to attract potential buyers. So it's as easy as that. In just one sentence, you have everything. Okay. Um, you can even add more details by saying what this property is, no? To develop so a property in Barangay San Jose, blah blah blah, into an open market. So you can be more specific than that. Um, so it's very easy to write the problem statement actually. But then this is the main problems. You have to break it down into smaller problems. And the smaller problems are actually can actually be found in the problem itself. Okay. Now I was talking to Architect Malayaw just 2 nights ago. We were talking about the research component, and he agreed that he agreed. No, he also noticed that a lot of you sometimes are stuck on some terms. Maybe it's your training in senior high school, okay? And I want you to be able to get out of that box, no, so that you can think outside of box. What am I saying? The use of terms, like if I ask you to make a sub problem, you end up making a sub problem, but also a uh, set of objectives. Okay, so you have sub problems and then another set of objectives. Why? Because probably you were trained to always include an objective. Okay, um, the sub problem is the same as the objective. Okay, so if you write the sub problems, in effect you have written the objectives. It's something like that. It's just that it's worded differently. I mentioned this in the plenary, you know, for the first plate, because an objective is always written with a to plus verb, no, to develop, to whatever, to do this, to do that. But then a sub problem is either written as a statement or a question, and sometimes we call it sub questions. So it's either that, no, um, it's either or. Uh, so you cannot have sub problems then objectives. That's redundant. And then it would have been okay if the objectives actually relate to the sub problems since they are the same. But sometimes the sub problems are totally different from the objectives. It's as if you're dealing with a very very complex problem. And when you are doing research, the idea is really to simplify everything so that you can answer a question. So, or you can answer a problem. So when I say a research question, it's synonymous to research problem. Okay. So again, some of you is also stuck, no, with uh, probably with the term of a research question. So after having written the research problem, we still write a separate research question. So that um, it's a matter of terminologies. Okay. So there's only one problem or research question, or I don't know how else it is called. Okay, so perhaps different textbooks use different words, different books use different words, but then it doesn't mean that they're different. Like, in terms of words only, uh, they're different, but then in context, the problem is the same as the research question. Okay, and the sub problem is the same as the objectives, etc., etc. If we break this down into objectives, this time I call them objectives, I did not call them sub problems. So we end up with actually three: safety, health, and aesthetic. Because you can find it here in the statement: provides a safe community. So that's a safe that talks about safety, promotes outdoor activities for a healthy lifestyle. So that talks about health, and conveys a particular theme to attract potential buyers. So that has something to do with aesthetics. Okay. So if you notice, it is part of the problem. It is not totally alien. Okay. And the sub problems are not something which are procedural. Okay, what do you mean by procedural? There are things that you do in research which is common in all research. And what are those? To gather data, to analyze data, to come up with a conclusion. So you do not put them as sub-problems because they are part of the procedure. When you talk about sub-problems, it has to do with a research problem, that one particular problem, no? Which is not procedural. And you do not write at all to find a design solution for this, because it's like, okay, that's basically the problem. You're supposed to look for a solution, but we cannot answer it if we're only saying, okay, solution, I want a solution. You have to define what sort of solution do you want. It is the solution that I want is a property which will be converted to an open market housing, blah 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 blah. So, wala, no? So that's why sometimes there are so many dramas, no, in real life, because people cannot people cannot define what they really need, they really want, no? What their problem is. Okay, so when it comes to safety, the objective is to create a neighborhood which is safe from harm. And we can now sort of qualify what that harm means. So some of you mentioned about criminals, and then there's also mentions of accidents. Okay, so that the road has to be designed so that people do not accidentally get run over, or yeah, no, or no one stumbles, no, because there are so many humps, or there are no signages or something like that, or they get lost. Okay, because the roads are designed like a maze. So anything that has to do with safety. And then health. So another objective is to create a neighborhood that promotes a healthy lifestyle. And then we actually mentioned in the brief about outdoor activities. Okay, so what are these outdoor activities? So there has to be spaces where people want to go out to do something outside the house. Okay, so that's a hint. No, what possible spaces can we put? And then no pollution. Some of you mentioned this, like waste, like noise. Okay, and then allowing in more air and sun. So this is part of health. And then finally, aesthetics. So the objective is to develop visually attractive, well, a development to create a development that is visually attractive to future tenants. Okay, and then was actually mentioned that there should be a theme. Okay, and then we also mentioned that it's open market, therefore it has to be high end. Okay, so that theme has to fit that high end characteristic, so that you're not going to go for a slum theme or something, no? Basta high end. So something clean, something expensive to look at, kana. Um, dili kay kuan. Not the Bronx, or not the, I don't know what else. Okay. I don't know whether if it's, for example, the tropical theme, but then you have to interpret it into a high end type of interpretation. So basically, these are how I'm going to grade your design for the finals, for the final submission. whether what you design creates a neighborhood which is safe from harm, a neighborhood that promotes a healthy lifestyle, and it is also a development that is visually attractive to future tenants. Okay. Now, so we come to the end. It's the next assignment is to look for an existing subdivision with similar design issues, okay, as the class project, as our project. So each one will make a report. So I will call on each one. So I guess I expect ang uban sa inyo siguro mga absent. But anyways, report next meeting on how the planner addressed those issues. So it's not a matter of getting a plan from the internet and then posting it. I will be posting a assignment in Canvas where you can submit. And then each student must not report on the same subdivision. Okay, so I don't like to hear students saying, sir, pareho man mini kuan, isa na lang among kuan, duha na lang mi ani na subdivision. So no, please. Okay, so you have enough time from now to Monday. There's a lot of time. Tomorrow, Friday is in fact a holiday. So in principle, it's detox. But I don't know. To avoid this, use the Google Sheet in the assignment in the Google Classroom. So I'm actually putting up by 3:30 it will be released. There's an assignment in Google Classroom that will come out with the Google Sheet. So you access that and then you put in your name of the subdivision and the location right beside your name. Okay, so it's first come first serve. So when you go in there and then someone else has beaten you to it, no, and someone else has written the name of the subdivision that you want to tackle, so you have to look for another. Okay. Okay, that's it. So all I can say now is good luck. No, I hope that the instructions are clear.
Sir, I
So
have a question. The assignment.
yes, Alexandria.
Should the subdivision be in Cebu?
Not necessarily. No, it doesn't have to be in Cebu.
Um, and should it be 1 hectare, sir, like the plate too?
Um, Much better if 1 hectare, but again, not necessary because we focus more on the how the design issues were solved. If the design issues were somehow connected to the size of the property, then it is necessary, but this one is not. So regardless of the size, as long as it is safe, it is health, considers health, a healthy environment, and then there's a theme. So actually, there will be more choices.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so it has to be an existing, but it can also be a proposed one as long as the drawings are complete. Okay, um, I think there's a lot of these drawings are available. Ang site development plan nila is available in the internet, no? Especially that because they use it to sell the property, so they put out this, ano. And then of course it would have been better if you were able to contact a designer. That's a perfect, but sometimes it's not necessary because you yourself can see how how the designer answered the design issues, okay, by looking at the drawing. So kamo na lang interpret, okay, and then let's see if the interpretation is correct or not, no? And then so don't be afraid kung oops, mali di because this is how we learn, no? We were told okay, medyo simangin yung interpretation, so no problem. Any questions? Any other questions? Hmm, I guess none, no? It's still 3:06, 3:30 pa mo gawas ang kuan. So, ang Google Sheet. and I still have to make the one in Canvas of the assignment. Um, well, to some of you, I have written some letters, emails individually to nangumusta lang ko, no? And a few of you answered back. So I'm starting to understand why some of you were not able to submit. uh, and it's good to tell me, okay, why, so that I can understand, because it also helps me develop policies for the class, and not only for this class, no, when I meet my other teachers in a faculty meeting, so I can share it also, that there are things that are kind of actually be avoided, which they have not considered, no, because I don't know, they have not experienced, or no one told them about it. Okay, so it's the pandemic, so you have to be a little more flexible. Pero my advice is don't hold too much on the plate number one. No, baka submit, try to submit it as soon as possible, because work will pile up. This plate number two, even ako can say that it's really a big project. There's a lot, no? You'll be designing three houses plus the subdivision. So it's like kung first year plate pa, marag upat na ka plate, no? Sa first year. And then sa second year, sometimes this is by partner ang kuan, ang plate. But here, since they decided na individual, since it's also computerized anyway, and that also leads me to that uh, issue, no, of the computer. I don't think you are obliged to use Revit. I know that I tried Revit. I'm not really good at it. I'm very good in AutoCAD, but when the shift went to the Revit already, so I sort of backed out. Okay, there was a time when I was teaching AutoCAD, and we were trying to specialize on some features of AutoCAD. But when the shift went to Revit, I that's the time that I thought that, okay, I'm not going to learn this. So I purposely um, did not want to learn Revit. Okay, but before Revit, there was the architectural desktop. Yeah, architectural desktop, and it was like Revit, but it's more light. Okay, and like you have to build a model, and then the model becomes your basis for the plans and elevations. That was what I was specializing in. But when they came out with the Revit, um, and then they did not use the same interface as the architectural desktop, which means I had to relearn everything using different terms. So that's when I gave up, no? um, and I also saw that the Revit will be very heavy. Okay, so you have to find a way that um, you can work on the Revit, then not make it very complicated, so that your computer does not crash. Okay, for example, you might be putting in more details than necessary. Okay, so you don't have to put all of those details. Um, for example, if you're going to make a door, and then you're going to put a a lock set. It doesn't have to be a very fancy lock set. It can only just be a very simple solid there, you know, that uh, um, that will represent a lock. Otherwise, because if you're going to again um, download a model of a lock set from a manufacturer, like what is done in a SketchUp warehouse, so it becomes very heavy. And then since you're going to be repeating the the houses on a perspective or in a walkthrough, so there's a way of repeating it in AutoCAD. It's like blocks and instances, no? So if you repeat a block, the same block, so it has so many instances, but the computer considers it as only one object, one block. So it does not consider all of the other instances as different objects. So it's the file is smaller. But if you don't know that, and then, for example, in SketchUp, instead of making a component which is equivalent to a block, what you did is you group it, and then you made so many of it. Each group is actually an object. Okay, so that was the mistake of most people. So if you make it a component and then you multiply it, SketchUp will think of it as just one component. Okay, even if you multiply it by 100 times, SketchUp will only see it as one component. So the file size is smaller. So there are a lot of tricks, no, to make this smaller. And then that's why for me, uh, a lot of the young students, I guess we're still young, we're still in the second year. Uh, the main problem, especially with the very good ones, is their tendency to be perfectionists. Okay, a perfectionist. So they always end up late because they're never satisfied. Okay, but for me, a perfect work is a completed work submitted on time. Okay, that's a perfect work. It may have its flaws, but a work which is submitted late is for me, no matter how beautiful you think it is for me not perfect. It can never be perfect, no. You can never have 100 points because it is late. So that's why stick to what is required, the minimum required, and then just submit it, no. Murag kuan ba? Murag less is more. Okay. So I hope that inspires you to work on your plate number one and submit as soon as possible. So I'm just really worried that work will pile up. Okay. So kato lang murag naman to pangasaba pero it's not really, no. Um, there's no other question. We can end the presentation now, and then I leave you to work on the assignment. Okay, so I'll just turn off my video until the last one goes out. Okay, so goodbye everyone and see you next week, April 12th.
Thank you, sir. Bye, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank
Bye,
you.
sir.
Bye.
Sir, regarding sa katong subdivision nga i-choose ba,
Yep, yep. Once a man.
kay kuan na sir, like minimum ay maximum ba to kay 1 hectare
No, it
in
doesn't
area?
have to be regardless of the size. The size does not matter.
Oh, okay sir. Thank you sir.
Okay.
Bye sir.